Before we start our program tonight, I want to introduce some of our very special guests here. First of all, our board members, our board president, Jean McNary, and then we have Jane Vickery, and we have Mary Steinow, who's secretary to our board. And Jean, I think I told you he was president. And we have Greg Keller, who's the second vice president. We have David Nyers. We have Max Wolfram. And am I missing anybody else from the board? I think I have everybody from the board. And I'd like to introduce John Carey, who is the superintendent of Special School District. And John is a wonderful supporter of the foundation, and we really do appreciate it. I also want to introduce Monica Fanning. She's the liaison to the foundation. Appreciate everything that she does for us. Also, Debbie Smith, who is the leadership coordinator, does a fabulous job. And I couldn't recognize Debbie without recognizing Jody Hay, and she makes such a wonderful contribution. I really do appreciate it. And the other person I'd like to give some recognition to is Karen Carter. Karen does our golf tournament and just does an absolutely incredible job. And those of you who know Karen know that there's nobody else in the entire world like Karen, and there never could be another person like Karen. Okay.
No one will be calling all of you. Don't laugh.
Our golf tournament's coming up. We're always looking for sponsors and for gifts. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our board president, who is going to introduce our distinguished speaker this evening. Jean McNary has been our board president for several years, and then he stopped for a while, and then he became interim, backed by popular demand. So now he's my boss again. But Jean has had quite a distinguished career in public service. And Jean was a prosecuting attorney in St. Louis County, and he was county executive of St. Louis County for 15 years. And then he was the commissioner of immigration and naturalization under the first George Bush. And then he became the director of gaming for the state of Missouri. And now he's just president of the board and my boss. And he's also one of my best friends, Jean McNary.
Thanks, Diane. That executive director of gaming, that's as in casinos, not wildlife and deer and all that. Thank you for being here. This is a special occasion, 10 years with the leadership program, and we're proud of those graduates who are here tonight, and we're proud of those who aren't here tonight, because we've seen a lot of progress, a lot of leadership that has emanated from that program, and it's been a great one. Jane Vickery has worked with the students who were leaders, and I don't know if Jane stood up before, but stand up now, will you, and take a bow, because I think she really has done a great job with that program. Let me tell you that with all of that political career behind me, I'm not gainfully employed now, but my wife is, and so I wave goodbye to her every morning, smiling, and I go to the conferences with her, and one was in Portland, Oregon, and she's in risk management. Now, I don't know why this speaker was there, except that he kind of inspires and motivates anybody from any field of endeavor. And I happened to sit down and listen, and I was taken by him, as was everybody in the room, and that's Michael Hingson, who is the speaker tonight. And when I came back, I said to Diane that we had to have this man here to talk to our group, and he came in especially for tonight. Now, we also leaned on him to speak last night, and he spoke to a combined group of Foundation people and Character Plus. We partnered on that, and it was a great event, and he was good as usual. But then he spoke at noon today to the cooperating school district officials, the deans or superintendents, principals we used to call them. And so we made good use of him. Now last night, I'd never met him before. And I introduced him, but I've kind of followed the script. But since then, I know now that he's a baseball nut. He's an expert in baseball. And I love that. He's a Dodger fan. Right on cue. Right on cue.
We love the bums.
He loves the bums. And so I like it. We'll forgive him for that. But I want to remind him that, we got to the World Series last year by beating the Dodgers, and we beat their ace, who may be the best pitcher in all of baseball, Kershaw, and we did it with our rookie walk-up. You remember that? Yeah, all right. Well, just so you don't forget that, Michael. Then, after his talk and after he answered questions and promoted his books, he may even mention that tonight. He has some books that are very beneficial and inspiring. We stopped in for a snack and a libation. Well, Michael, it happens to be, is a great debater. I knew this guy was smart, but wow, in verbal combat, he's something else. I mean, we were talking politics. That's my field, He is one tough customer. So now I know. There's no feeling sorry for this guy. He is a tough hombre. It's not by accident. We all remember, and he's going to give a message tonight, and I'll say a little bit more about him personally. But we remember the horror and the tragedy of 9/11. It's a day none of us will ever forget, but perhaps no one remembers it quite like Michael Hingson. Michael's life changed dramatically on that fateful day when he and his guide dog, Roselle, escaped and led others to safety from the 78th floor of Tower 1 in the World Trade Center moments before it collapsed. Soon after, Michael and Roselle were thrust into the international limelight, where Michael began to share his unique survival story and the 9/11 lessons of trust, courage, heroism, and teamwork. Since that time, he has become nationally recognized expert on strength and power of teamwork. Now, it's not by accident that this guy is smart and tough. He's been blind since birth. He's no stranger to challenges. He and his guide dog were originally banned from riding the school bus. His parents fought the system and won the battle, and many others. Michael shocked his peers when he learned to ride a bicycle. Now listen to this. He learned to ride a bicycle alone through the streets of Palmdale, California. He has a master's degree in physics, has had a successful 27-year career in high-tech computer sales and management, and is the author of a #1 New York Times bestseller called Thunderdog. Michael is the president of the Michael Hingson Group, lives with his wife Karen in Northern California, and this dog with him tonight is Africa. Apparently the trainers of these dogs give them that name. That's what Michael explained to me last night. This is his 7th guide dog. And ladies and gentlemen, this is one great American. And it's my honor and privilege to present to you Michael Hingson.
Gene, thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here to have the chance to chat with all y'all, as we say in the South. I need to point out a few things. Say what you want about the Dodgers, but let's point out that Tony La Russa now lives in California.
He's in Arizona.
What you get for thinking. Now, you know, we could extol the virtues of the Dodgers, who have the best announcer in all of baseball, no doubt about it. And we could talk about the virtues of the St. Louis Cardinals. But come on, let's find a way to agree. Down with the Yankees. See, I think that we can all buy that one. Gene, thank you for that introduction. I have been introduced on many stages. My most memorable one, I think, was when a lawyer who kept his hands in his pockets came and introduced me. He walked to the podium and in these stentorian tones and with great rhetoric introduced me as Michael Hingson and my guide dog at the time, Roselle, two very rare creatures indeed who survived being in the World Trade Center on 9/11. I wasn't sure how to deal with this thunderbolt and what he had to say, so finally came to me as I was walking to the podium, and I said, I thought that we had a much rarer creature in our midst, and that was a lawyer who kept his hands in his own pockets. I'd like to introduce to you my colleague. This is Africa. Africa is now a little over 7 years old. Come on. Good girl. There's Africa. Yeah, wave. Africa says, why do you do that to me? So Africa is from Guide Dogs for the Blind in San Rafael, California, which is right near San Francisco. And for the past 12 years, I have lived in San Francisco. I want to point out to you that we don't see enough about loyalty in the world. People shift their positions. People go with the flow just to be politically correct. But let's point out, I lived in the San Francisco area for 12 years and still root for the Dodgers. Well, anyway, it is really my honor to be able to be here and talk with all of you, especially the graduates of the leadership program and those who may just be getting out of it and moving on. Gene said something that I do have to come back to, and that is the concept of, it was amazing that I rode and learned to ride a bicycle around my hometown of Palmdale, California. And I respect and understand why people always say that. But the question that I think is important to ask is, why is it that people are so amazed? Why do we have to be so thunderstruck when something like that is discovered or occurs? Well, okay, I know why. Because people have a perception of what it means to be blind that doesn't allow for that kind of thing to occur. But this goes beyond blindness. Every one of you who has been in this program has some characteristic that society brands as a disability. Am I right? Yeah. The problem is, all of those people who are doing the branding have their own disability. We don't always know what it is, but it's there. So I could say, for example, a lot of them don't do physics well. Maybe some of you don't do physics well, but we're going to leave you out of it. All those so-called non-disabled people, there are a whole slew of them that don't do physics very well, or don't do politics very well, that don't have the ability, it would appear, to stand up and do public speaking. Oh, I could never do that. I couldn't stand up and let a bunch of people stare at me. There comes the sight problem back in, They're picturing all these people looking at them because that's the way they view the world. But the bottom line is, we all have physical challenges or mental challenges in our life. The difficulty is that a lot of us hide our disabilities because we fit into the norm. And as a result, we're not considered to be disabled, but we are. Make no mistake about it. In some way, there is not one person on the earth that we cannot find something that they can't do that other people can, which by definition makes them a person with a disability. So why do we get amazed when some people can do something that is out of our sphere of normalcy? That's what we have to deal with, and that's the real issue to deal with tonight. And that is what all of you deal with on a daily basis. No matter what they think you can't do, the reality is you might be able to do it using different techniques. You might not be able to do it. It doesn't make you less than normal, because normal is a relative thing, and no one has the right to dictate to you or to me what normal is. And I can tell you after 9/11, normal will never be the same again, and I don't know if we ever will truly find a new normal, although we are trying to get back to the old normal prior to 9/11, our way of living. The reality is we can't, and we shouldn't. 9/11 should have taught us lessons about understanding and working with other people, dealing with other people, recognizing we're not the only ones who may have some mental strength and character. And yes, it also might mean that we understand that there are some people who are misguided in their views of humanity. But the reality is normal will never be the same again. And the new normal, whatever it turns out to be, or as we're trying to find a new normal, it ought to include us being able to have the same right to live in the world and do the same things that everyone else can do. I could ride a bicycle, and I could do it with my eyes closed. Ha! How many of you can do that? So who's disabled, right? I can read in the dark. How many of you can do that? Well, do we have any blind people in the room? Any? Yes, no? No?
No.
Okay. Because if there were and they learned Braille, which any blind person should learn to do, then they can read in the dark. The rest of you are clearly disabled and lower on the totem pole than us normal people, by any definition of the word. But the fact of the matter is we all have gifts. That's even better to say than we all have challenges. We all have gifts. And everyone should learn to use their gifts, whatever they may be, to the maximum capacity possible. When I once was seeking a job, I had worked at other companies. I even owned my own company back in the mid-1980s for 4 years, selling computer design systems to architects. Figure a blind guy selling some of the most graphic systems in the world to architects and owning a company to do that. Hey, it was okay, because I didn't need to work the machine, as long as I knew how to work the machine, so I could talk to other people about it. But I did that for a while and then wanted to go back into the workforce. And along the way, I found this ad in a newspaper. And the ad was for a job that seemed very intriguing and certainly was right up with the characteristics and skills that I had, so I wanted to do it. But I was talking to my wife, Karen, one day back in 1989. By the way, Karen also is a person with a disability. She uses a wheelchair. So in our marriage, we've been married since November of 1982. She reads, I push, works out well. And so we were talking, and she said, well, what's your problem? Well, do I tell them in my letter of introduction that I'm blind or not? Because that's an ongoing debate and discussion about when any of us apply for a job. Do we talk about our disability? And she said, you took a Dale Carnegie sales course back in 1979 and into 1980, and didn't it talk to you about turning liabilities into assets? And I sort of sat there for a second and went, oh my gosh, a little light bulb went off over my head. I now understand the little light bulbs in the cartoons that go off over your head, because it went off over my head. I saw the light. Amen. And I went off and I wrote a letter. The last paragraph in my letter went something like this. In considering my resume, the most important thing you need to know about me is that I happen to be blind. As a blind person, I've had to sell all my life just to be able to survive. I've had to sell to be able to buy a house. I've had to sell and convince people that I could take my guide dog with me wherever I want, or live in an apartment and take my guide dog with me, and that I was capable of doing that. So when you're hiring someone for this job, you want to hire someone who just considers sales a job and then goes home at the end of the day and doesn't even think about it? Or do you want to hire somebody who understands sales for the science and art that it is and sells 24 hours a day, every day, just to be a viable member of the human race? That was the letter that I wrote. That was the letter that got me the interview, and those were the statements that got me the job. Confronting it head on, and the reality is everyone in this room may have what they or others perceive as liabilities. What you can do and should do and need to do in order to thrive and keep up with everyone else is to find ways to turn those liabilities into assets. And you can. Blindness is an asset for me. I prefer to use a guide dog. Not that a guide dog is superior to a cane, but I prefer to use a guide dog because, bottom line, if I'm out working with customers, I'm different, I'm noticeable, and everyone loves the dog. And I will tell you that that is a sales tool second to none. Ask Diane Burr over here, who always wants to talk to Africa. But blindness is an asset to me because I, through my college training in physics, learned to pay attention to details. I used my skills, for example, when I worked in the World Trade Center, to learn the complex, to learn everything there was to know about traveling around and working and functioning in the World Trade Center. Because I don't get to read the signs on the walls, right? All of you get to take the lazy way out and read those signs that tell you where something is. I get to know where things are. So I don't even need to worry about if there's a power failure. If I'm in Penn Station in New York City and the power goes out, I'll be glad to escort anyone to their train tracks. For a modest fee, of course. You know, lights go out, I'm going to take advantage, right? Hey, why not, right? You want to get to your train? $100. Just give me everything you want. I'll sort it out later. But the bottom line is that, not really, but the bottom line is that I use the advantage of being blind to learn things that I might not otherwise have had the luxury and the joy to learn. Because technology and people make life so easy that we forget some of the basics that we really ought to cover. And I don't have to do that because I get to travel without using eyesight. It's an asset to me. Sometimes I have to convince people of that, but it is an asset, not a liability. Every one of you has those same things. Blindness is not what defines me. It is not the characteristic that determines who I am. What determines who I am and what determines who all of you are is simply and in fact how you live your life and what you choose to do with your life and how you choose to use the gifts that you have. Period. It doesn't matter what they are. And it doesn't matter what you supposedly lack according to other people. What matters is what you have and how you use it. For me, all of that was proven on 9/11. I went in that day after arranging to do some seminars and teach some of our reseller partners how to sell our products. I went in to do the seminars that day. I had been hired to open an office in 2000 in New York City. We opened it on the 78th floor of the World Trade Center. And it was there that I went to do the seminars that day. 78 floors, if you don't really have a total conception of it, is more than 3 football fields tall. The buildings were over 400 yards, or 4 football fields tall. And I was on the 78th floor, about 1,000 feet in the air. The bottom line is, for me, that was what I did every day. cool to go into these big, huge elevators and being taken up to my floor at 22 miles an hour and getting from the first to the 78th floor in 48 seconds. And it was fun. I took tours of the World Trade Center, going to Windows of the World and some of those places, and got to hear all the tour operators giving all their statistics. So it was really fun when I would go to meet guests coming to our office. I would go down in the elevator and bring them up and try to convince them that the elevator was really my office. I mean, it was large enough to be able to hold 20 or 30 people. And I'd be in there spouting off all these statistics and having a good old time and all that. But you know, the bottom line is that we opened this office, we did our work, and there I was on 9/11. At 8:45 in the morning, we had some guests in our conference room. A colleague from our corporate office, David Frank, was in the building and in my office with me because we had to prepare a list of the people who would be coming to the seminars in the course of the day. That was so that the Port Authority would let them up without having to call us every time somebody showed up, because no one got into the World Trade Center without being cleared by wherever they were going to be seen. At 8:45, I had stepped over to a file cabinet to acquire papers, to stationery, to create our list. I was reaching to the file cabinet when suddenly the building lurched. We heard a muffled explosion, and then, if you imagine my arm as the tower, the building started to tip. It just kept tipping and tipping and tipping. We moved about 20 feet. It just tipped. And my friend David said, "What's going on? What do you think it is?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "You think it was an earthquake?" You know, he's from the Bronx. He doesn't know anything about earthquakes. Even though he was now living in California, he didn't know anything about earthquakes. I said, "No, I don't think so, because earthquakes, the building would be shaking around, whatever, and it wasn't doing that. It was just tipping and tipping and tipping." I said, "Do you think it was an explosion?" He said, "Well, I don't know. I don't know why the building would be tipping." We just kept speculating. I moved over to the doorway, and I stood in the doorway. Hey, 78 floors up, it was a non-bearing wall, but what the heck, you know, building moves, go to door. That's what I learned when I was growing up, because we were right on the San Andreas Fault in California when I was growing up. So David, meanwhile, was holding on to my desk, as I said, and I was standing there monitoring my dog, who was under my desk, Roselle. We decided to let Roselle stay under the desk. She was more protected there than anywhere else. David and I finally said goodbye to each other because we thought that the building was going to take a 78-floor plunge to the street from where we were. Then the building stopped, and it started coming back the other way. As soon as it started moving, I kind of remembered letting out my breath. I had been holding it, not knowing what was going to happen. Finally, the building got to be vertical again, and as soon as it did, I went back into my office, and I met Roselle coming out from under my desk. So with Roselle, I told her to heel, which meant to come around on my left side, and to sit just like Africa did now. And there she was sitting and wagging her tail when suddenly the building dropped straight down about 6 feet. Now today we know why. Remember what I told you about learning everything that I could about the World Trade Center? So I learned what to do in emergencies. I learned a lot about the tower. The one thing they never told me was, although I should have figured it out, is that the building is actually constructed with very large expansion joints that allow it to be hit by an airplane. The Empire State Building had been struck in the 1940s by an Air Force plane. I guess back in those days it was called the Army Air Force plane that got lost in a fog bank and crashed into the Empire State Building, and it flexed because it was built to withstand any number of different things that could happen to it, being buffeted in the winds and being hit by an airplane. Likewise, the World Trade Center was constructed so that if an airplane hit it, it wouldn't topple the whole complex. Who would have ever thought that people would deliberately fly into the complex or into one of the buildings with a plane loaded to the brim with fuel? That's what happened, of course. In any case, the building dropped, and then immediately my friend David, who had been holding onto my desk, turned and looked out the window and started shouting, "Oh my God, Mike, there's fire and smoke and millions of pieces of burning paper that are falling outside our window. We got to get out of here. We can't stay here. We can't stay here anymore. The building's on fire." And I said, "Slow down, David. We'll get out, but we're okay." No, we got to get out of here." I could hear debris falling outside the window. No question that we had to leave. I mean, the building tipped and all that, for heaven's sakes. Of course we had to get out. But I said, "David, slow down." Our guests in our conference room began to scream. They started moving toward our exits. And David said, we got to get out of here. We can't stay here. And I said, David, slow down. Then he finally used the big line. You can't see. You don't know what's going on. Look, it happens all the time. A young man came up to me in a store a week and a half ago and said, I'm sorry for you because you're blind. And I said, well, really, I got to tell you, I'm sorry for you because you could see and you'll never get to know what it's like to be blind. It's all a matter of perspective. In any case, I finally got David to focus. Because you see, I was observing something David was not. Ever read stories or heard about stories of animals that saved their humans from buildings that were on fire or whatever? Because the dogs can sense those things and they alert their sleeping people or whatever. They have their own fears. You can tell when a dog is nervous or upset by whatever's going on. Roselle wasn't doing any of that. She was sitting next to me quietly like Africa, as I said, yawning and wagging her tail, mainly just going, who the heck woke me up anyway? Roselle was not giving me any indication of any fear. That told me all I needed to know. Namely, at that point in time, we didn't need to panic. We needed to get out, but we could do it orderly. We could do it with safety, and we could do it without fear. Because I had an advanced warning system next to me under most circumstances. I finally got David to focus, and I said, get our guests to the stairs and get them started down, then come back and we'll leave. I called my wife, told her what had happened, and that there had been an explosion or something, and we were going to be leaving the complex, and I would call her as soon as I could. David came back, we swept the offices, then we went to the stairs and started down. Almost immediately, I began smelling an odor. The odor was something that it took me a couple of floors to recognize. It was familiar. I couldn't place it, but I should know what it is. And finally, I realized I'm smelling what I smell every time I go to an airport. And I did a lot of traveling for my company. And so I said, oh my gosh. I said to other people around me, I'm smelling the fumes from burning jet fuel. And some of them said, yeah, you're right. That's what it is. We must have been hit by an airplane. So from that point on, we assumed that an airplane hit us, but we didn't know what was going on or why. But it was a good working hypothesis. We went down the stairs. Along the way, there were times that people would suddenly say, I can't go on. A woman near us at one point stopped after seeing some very badly burned people on the stairs, and she said, I can't go on. I can't breathe. We're not going to make it out. 9 of us just stopped and surrounded her and had a group hug on the stairs. Roselle was giving her kisses. And I said to her, come on, you can do it. We were hugging her. Other people were hugging her. And we just kept going down the stairs. We got her to continue to go. My friend David at one point finally said, Mike, we're going to die. We're not going to make it out of here. And I just said, stop it, David. If Roselle and I can go down these stairs, so can you. And I yelled at him very deliberately because I needed to snap him out of whatever was going on with him. And he told me later that it did. And then he did something that I thought was one of the most wonderful and miraculous things of 9/11. He said, I'm going to leave you and walk down the stairs a floor below you. He told me he told me later he did this because he needed to have something else to think about. He said, I'm going to call up to you whatever I see on the stairs, so you've got some advanced warning of what's going on. I said, okay. So we were on the 49th floor. He went on down to the 48th floor, and then he said, Mike, I'm on 48. Everything is good. Why do I think that was so incredible and so miraculous and so wonderful? Because what David was doing, he thought he was doing for me. I mean, it was great to have that, but it wasn't a big deal for me. What it was, however, was his voice was a beacon for anyone who could hear it. He spoke out, and everyone who could hear him knew that where he was, and he always announced what floor he was on, that he was okay, which meant other people were okay, which meant we could just keep going. He gave people something to listen to. Hey, I'm on the 47th floor. Everything is good here. Going on down the stairs. I'm walking down the stairs now, getting close to 46, and I was up above him a floor higher. For my part, my way of dealing with the fear was encouraging Roselle. I did not want her to become fearful. And so what did I do? I encouraged her. I praised her. I said, you're doing a great job. Good girl. I sounded confident for her, which helped me, of course, but I needed to sound confident for her. I needed to encourage her. What we learn when we get guide dogs is to build a team. And we also learn, contrary to what a lot of people think about guide dogs and the people who use them, the person is the leader of the team. The dog doesn't know where I want to go, and the dog doesn't know how I want to get there. And I don't want the dog to know that. That's not the dog's job. The dog's job is to make sure that I walk safely down the stairs or walk safely on the sidewalk. If there are obstacles that come along, the dog will stop or just go around them. We get to curbs or stairs, the dog stops. Then I direct the dog as to what I want it to do. How do I know where to go? Gosh, that's as complicated to talk about as it is for anyone who has eyesight to talk about it. It doesn't mean that I can't do it. It only means I'm using skills and techniques that don't require the limitation of eyesight. And I put it that way because when I hear, I can hear in front of me, to the side, behind me, above me, and below me, and I don't even have to look. The fact of the matter is hearing is all around us. And more people ought to use it. We would learn and know a lot more about our society if we did a better job of listening. Of course, I say that to all my politician friends. It doesn't work very well. I think you got to take a dumb pill to be an elected official, but I don't know. Gene, I said an elected official. Well, you were elected to some, but okay, I wasn't trying to abuse you. I was thinking more of those people in that grand old benevolent asylum for the helpless in Washington, D.C., as Mark Twain would call it. In any case, we and I listen, right? And so I learn and know what to do and how to get around using those skills. So my job as the leader of the team is to encourage my teammate, in this case, is to make her feel calm and confident and give her firm, crisp directions. As the team leader, I'm the coach, the teacher, the boss sometimes, the cheerleader, the confessor, everything. I'm the one, or the confessee actually, because I'm the one that has to interpret her problems and talk to her about my own. And yes, I do that with the dog because we have to be that close or we don't function well together. It's a bond. It takes a year to develop the bond in which we get matched as dog and person, if the match works. Usually it does. In any case, I was praising her and encouraging her. What I didn't know until later is a lot of people were following me simply because I was doing that. Last August, I met a woman in Kansas City who learned that I was going to be there to give a speech. She had been keeping up with me on my website, as it turns out. She wrote and she said that wanted to get together. Turns out that she saw us pass her on the 54th floor of the World Trade Center as we were descending. And she said, I watched you, I watched how you were interacting with your dog and praising your dog, and I figured if you could do that and not be worried, I ought to be able to do that too, and I followed you down the stairs, although you kept walking faster and got ahead of us. But the fact is that we all helped each other going down the stairs that day. So I was working with Roselle, also to keep my mind off of stuff. I decided I was going to figure out how many stairs we were going to go down. I don't believe in counting stairs. In fact, when I come to a stairwell and I'm with someone and they always say things like, oh, we got to go up, 6 stairs, I never listen to them. I don't pay attention to them because what they tell me isn't relevant. That's strange to say, but the bottom line is I have to work on working with the dog. So I don't care how many stairs it is. I need the dog to start us up the stairs when I say forward, and the dog will tell me when we get to the stop. I don't care how many stairs there are. But also, I got to tell you, most people never count the stairs the right way. When it's 6, it's usually 7, because they forget the top step. So I've learned to tune them out anyway, because they never get it right. Very seldom do people get it right. So anyway, we're going down the stairs, David's talking, we're all working together. And finally, I realized people are getting pretty quiet. And I got to deal with this because I don't want people being quiet. And I decided to take the lead on something. So I was also getting a little bit fearful about something, namely the fact that we had power and lighting on the stairs. And what was going to happen if we lost all of our lights? I know what was going to happen. I was going to be stuck on the stairs with thousands of functionally blind people who couldn't find their way out of a paper bag. And we'd have panic, and I needed to try to step in and address that before it got too worrisome for people. So it was about the 38th floor, and I said to people, hey y'all, I don't want anyone to worry. If the power and lights go out on the stairs, don't panic at all. I happen to be blind. I've got my guide dog Roselle with me here, and we're offering a half-price special to get you out today only. I wanted people to laugh and lighten up, but I also wanted them to think about the fact that there was someone who was there to help, who didn't care about the lights. It was strategic. We got to the 30th floor, met firefighters coming up the stairs. Talked with them for a while. They wanted to escort me down the stairs, and I didn't want them to because I didn't need help going down the stairs. And of course, if they were helping me, they'd want to grab my arm and lift me up as I'm going down the stair, and that's what the dog's for, leave me alone. So we worked through it. I also didn't want to break up their team. I didn't need assistance, and I didn't want them helping me because they had to go fight the fire. They were carrying their equipment. They were carrying, as it turns out, like 50 pounds of equipment each. Even if one decided to help me and I allowed it, they'd have to split their load up among other people. And it was hard enough for each of them to go up the stairs. It took them a minute to walk from one floor to the next going up. Us going down, it took 20 seconds to go from one floor to the next. It's all that heavy equipment and the gravity of the situation going up. Anyway, we continued down, got to the bottom. David got there and said, hey, I'm at the first floor. The water sprinklers are on. They're creating a barrier across the exit. And we learned later it was to deal with fire. Fire erupted in the stairs or outside of the stairs. It would protect people on the other side of the barrier. David was gone. He went through it. I got to the first floor. I heard this torrential downpour. I picked up Roselle's harness and I said, forward. And then a command, hop up, which is to speed up and pay attention. We burst through the curtain out into the other side, into the lobby, where there were a lot of people yelling, go this way. No, don't go over there. Don't go outside. Don't leave the building this way. Go over here. And it was this chaotic scene. The water was ankle deep on the floor. The building was being filled up by the water from all those sprinklers at the various stairwells. There were 3 stairwells, and there was a lot of water. This guy came up to me, and David, he said he was with the FBI. He would get us out into the lobby and give us directions. I asked him what was going on. He said, I don't have time to talk about it. I love information. I wish I had been told. It would have affected decisions that we made later. But no one was telling us. Bad move. But I understand they thought that people would panic. It would have been good for me, but that's okay. We went out into the central part of the World Trade Center, which on the first floor is a shopping mall. And it had all the usual things that a shopping mall has. It had a Hallmark store, and there was a Radio Shack and all that. And then the important stuff, the relevant stuff. Like right outside our doorway into One World Trade Center was a Ben & Jerry's ice cream party. It doesn't get more important than that. So we ran through that shopping mall where there would normally be thousands of people at that time of day. It was totally quiet. People were being evacuated. You could hear your footfalls as you ran. Finally up an escalator, and at 9:45, an hour after the plane hit the building, we made it outside in the sunlight. The first thing that happened is David looked around and saw that there was fire in Tower 2, and he said, Mike, there's fire in Tower 2. The building's on fire. Where's that coming from? Well, our tower had tipped toward the other tower, so one explanation was maybe the fire jumped across. Didn't really make a lot of sense, but it was as good as anything. Another airplane hit. How'd that happen? We had no idea what went on. All we knew was we were told to leave the complex. So we walked over to Broadway, which was a north-south street. You've probably heard Broadway, where all the theaters are and all that, but that's further uptown. We turned left and went north on Broadway. We were on the west side of it as we were going up the left side of the street. So there was a building right to my left, Broadway to my right, going north. And we walked several blocks. Finally, we got to a street called Ann Street on the right, and then changed to a street called Maiden Lane on the left, which went down to the New York Stock Exchange. David wanted to take pictures because it put us diagonally right across from Tower 2, where he saw the fire. He said, I got really good pictures that I want to take of the fire. I can see it. We'll get some good shots. He stopped. I took out my phone to try to call my wife. I couldn't get through because the circuits were busy. People were saying goodbye to their loved ones who were trapped up above. I had just put my phone away. David was putting his camera away when the police officer yelled, get out of here, it's coming down now! And we heard this rumble that became this deafening roar. I described the sound as kind of a combination of a freight train and a waterfall. You could hear metal clinking and clattering and glass breaking and then this white noise as the building just collapsed in on itself. Freight train waterfall is as good a sound as I can give you a description that would tell you what we were hearing. Everyone turned and ran. David ran. He was gone. I bodily moved Roselle around, turned 180 degrees, and started running back the way I came, now back toward Tower 1. Building was on my right-hand side. I could hear that there was a little bit of an overhang above me, so I stayed under the overhang as we ran. Debris was falling around us. I actually got hit in the ear and on the head with a couple of small pieces of rock and concrete as we ran. We got to the next street, which was Fulton Street, and I decided to turn right on Fulton Street, try to get a building between us and some of the flying debris. Of course, if Tower 2 had tipped over, since it was 400 yards tall and we were only 100 yards away from it, we wouldn't be here today. But the building did exactly what it was supposed to do. And as I ran now going west on Fulton Street, suddenly I caught up to David. David and I, when we met each other, he apologized for running away. He was going to come back and get me. He had stopped and decided to come back, but I caught up with him first. So we just kept running. I said, let's just keep going. Don't worry about it. And as we ran, we suddenly got engulfed in a dust cloud. All the fine particles, the dirt and debris of Tower 2 as it was breaking apart. The air was so thick with dirt and dust and debris and junk that David said he couldn't see his hand 6 inches in front of his face. I could tell you it was so thick that I could feel everything going down my throat and settling in my lungs. We were beginning to suffocate from that dust cloud. We decided that we had to get out of it, and so I began looking for an opening on my right. I was listening for an opening that I could go into. Suddenly, as we were running, and I was telling Roselle, right, right, I don't know whether she could hear me or even see my hand signals over all the noise and everything that was going on in the dust cloud, but suddenly I heard an opening on my right, and Roselle obviously did see it. She turned right, she took one step, and she stopped, and she wouldn't move. I realized she wasn't acting in fear. She stopped because there was a reason for stopping. I know what Roselle is like when she's afraid, because she's afraid of thunderstorms. And she would shake and shiver. She wasn't doing any of that. She stopped because there was a reason for it. So I kind of stuck out a foot to investigate, which is what you do when you think there might be stairs or a curb or something. And I trailed a hand along the wall and suddenly discovered a stair rail. She had stopped at the top of a flight of stairs. She did her job perfectly. She did exactly what she was supposed to do. Roselle focused as a good member of the team should. She did her job. We went down the stairs after she got a big hug, and we got to the bottom of the stairs. And as I came down, I heard this woman crying, I can't see, my eyes are filled with dirt, I can't see, I don't want to fall into the subway. We had come into the Fulton Street subway station, and that's where we were. I got to the bottom of the stairs, and I realized I was very close to her, so I reached out, and I took her arm, and I said, hey, don't worry, my name's Mike, I happen to be blind, but I've got my guide dog with me. Roselle will make sure that neither of us fall down the stairs into the subway. Besides, you're like almost 10 feet away. You're okay. So worry about cleaning out your eyes. Don't worry about it. Just do that. How quickly teamwork reasserted itself, right? And yes, at that time, I was the leader of the team. Other times, not. But that time, yes. We stood there for a while, and then this guy came up the stairs from down in the subway system. He introduced himself as Lou, an employee of the subway system. He took us down to an employee locker room where we could sit on some benches that were there. There were water fountains. People were hacking and coughing, and there was a fan to kind of cool us down. We were there for about 10 minutes when a police officer came and found us all and said, you need to leave the area right now. Without waiting for discussion, he just turned and walked back the way he came. We all followed him and went to the stairwell that we had come down, walked up the stairs through the little arcade where I met the woman, went on up the stairs. She was with us. We all finally got outside, and the first thing that I noticed is the air was a little better, but there was still a lot of dust. And then David said, oh my God, Mike, it's gone. I said, what? He said, Tower 2. There's no Tower 2 anymore. I said, what do you see? And he said, all I see are pillars of smoke hundreds of feet tall. We stood there in shock, not understanding. Then turned west and continued to walk on Fulton Street. We walked for maybe about a quarter of a mile. Then we were in this little plaza area when suddenly we heard that freight train waterfall sound again, and we knew it must be our tower collapsing. We thought we were safe from being hit by debris, but David looked and saw another dust cloud coming, so we kind of moved to the side out of the path of as much of the cloud as we could. We hunkered down and covered our faces, and we waited until everything died down. Then we stood back up. David looked around and said, "Oh my God, Mike, there's no World Trade Center anymore." Again, I said, "What do you see?" And he said, "All I see are fingers of fire, hundreds of feet tall, pillars of smoke. The towers are gone." We couldn't fathom what had happened. We stood there for a couple of moments, and then I tried to call my wife Karen, and this time I got through. She's the one who told us how 2 aircraft had deliberately been crashed into the towers, one into the Pentagon, and a 4th was still missing over Pennsylvania. The rest of the day we spent getting back up toward central New York, Midtown Manhattan. I learned later the trains were running, and I called Karen and said I was going to be on a train coming back out to our town, Westfield, New Jersey. And at 7 o'clock, we pulled into Westfield. A friend of ours, Tom Painter, who Karen had known from high school in California, who was also living in New Jersey, had come down to be with her and me, not knowing that I was working in the towers. He, in turn, drove her to the station in our van because she didn't want to drive. I heard the van pull into the station as I was coming off of the train. I went down the tracks, the ramp came down, and I went up into the van and finally got to hug Karen at 7 o'clock for the first time that day. Tom stayed with us for the next week and a half, and we all just kind of continued to try to understand it. The day after 9/11, I contacted Guide Dogs for the Blind, and they put out a little story about us. That went viral in the media. The next 2 days later, I was interviewed on Larry King Live. The first of 5 interviews with Larry, the media got my story, and then people started calling and saying, "Would you come and tell us your story? And tell us what we should be learning from 9/11. And we'll pay you for it." Hey, for a sales guy, it doesn't get any better than that. And so my sales career in computer technologies was abandoned for a sales career in philosophy and in understanding that, as I said earlier, normal will never be the same again. And don't get comfortable with what you think is normal, because if you do, you exclude things that may be out of your sphere of understanding, and that we shouldn't do. Change is all around us. All of us will change. We may even get unexpected changes, hopefully never as dramatic as 9/11. We may not be able to control the change. What we can control is how we deal with the change, even if it's only mentally. We have control over how we react to any situation we face. That is a gift that all of us have. We can learn to use it and thrive and move forward, or not. That's a choice. And that's a lesson that all of us should take from 9/11. All of you will have lots of things to face in your lives. Everyone here who works for a company or just even at home will face things in their lives. How you react to it is going to determine the kind of person you are. Do you react with fear, or do you react with confidence, strategy, calmness, and a conviction that somehow will continue to move ahead? I personally refuse to live my life in fear in any way, shape, or form. People have said to me after 9/11, "Well, are you mad at Osama bin Laden? Don't you hate the guy?" And I said, "No, absolutely not." I said, "I know Osama bin Laden will someday receive justice. If I hate him and if I become angry at him, that's only going to hurt me, because do you think he cares?" Even a better example, I have a number of friends who are very staunch Democrats. And once in 2004, I was invited to go to the White House and meet George W. I was looking forward to it. And my friend said, "How could you do that? He's screwing up the country. He's a lousy president. He's no good, and this and that and the other stuff." And I said, but you hit it on the head. He's the president of the United States. And no matter who is president, we ought to respect that job and what that person has to deal with. And you know what? If I can have any little influence on him and help him do his job better, then isn't that a good thing to do? So I went to see him. It was supposed to be a 2-minute photo op. It ended up being a 15-minute meeting in the Oval Office, talking about 9/11, talking about the lessons of 9/11. And you know what? He's as good a guy as anyone else, and just like the rest of us, as human as the rest of us. So even if he took a dumb pill like all the other politicians, he's still a nice guy. and you know, I do not segregate or differentiate between parties in that, by the way. I mean, it's crazy. Look at politicians today. Politicians still continue to support a law that was passed in 1938 that allows for the government to exempt paying minimum wage to persons with disabilities. And it's the law. There are people with disabilities in this country who are being paid 3 cents an hour. It's a fact. You can get the Freedom of Information Act to provide you with the information to see it for yourself. And they're not changing it. Dumb. Because we're good employees. We can be leaders. Many of us are, some people in this room. The fact of the matter is, we're as good as we want to be, and as good as we know ourselves to be. If we prove it to ourselves, then we can prove it to other people. I want to leave you with something from my book, Thunderdog, and as Gene said, we do have a few copies out in the lobby that are available for sale. We've got some audio copies, and they're $20, and then we have some print copies, and they're $17 if you buy it by credit card. I don't have a lot of change, so I just tell people it's $20 too, and then the other $3 will go to a foundation that we formed called Roselle's Dream Foundation that provides funds to help purchase technology for blind kids who can't otherwise afford to pay for some of the technologies they need. It's just getting really started. But we have copies of that, the book, and also a new one we just published called Running with Roselle, and they're $10. So we don't have very many, but if you'd like them, they're there, and we'll help with that. But I want to read you something from Thunderdog. It is called Guide Dog Wisdom, Lessons I Learned from Roselle on 9/11, and it goes like this. Number 1, there's a time to work and a time to play. Know the difference. When the harness goes on, it's time to work. Work hard. Others are depending on you. Number 2, focus in and use all of your senses. Learn to tell the difference between a harmless thunderstorm and a true emergency. Don't let your sight get in the way of your vision. Number 3, sometimes the way is hard, but if you work together, someone will pass along a water bottle just when you need it. It happened to us as we were going down the stairs. Roselle was getting thirsty. A lot of us were getting thirsty, and somebody broke into a water vending machine and started sending up bottles of water. So Roselle, David, and I shared one. Number 4, Roselle's favorite. Always, but always kiss firefighters. Number 5, ignore distractions. There's more to life than playing fetch or chasing tennis balls. Number 6, listen carefully to those who are wiser and more experienced than you. They'll help you find the way. Number 7, don't stop until work is over. Sometimes being a hero is just doing your job. Number 8, the dust cloud won't last forever. Keep going and look for the way out. It will come. Number 9, shake off the dust and move on. Remember the first guide dog command, forward. Number 10, when work is over, play hard with your friends, and don't forget to share your favorite Vodafone. Everyone, thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been relevant. And just help the good guys win. Thanks very much.